Okay, good morning. On behalf of the members of the Standing Committee on Executive Appointment and Government Investigation, we would like to welcome Governor Ralph De Leon Guerrero Torres, his representative, Mr. Tamanglone, and the appointee, Mr. Peter Q. Cruz, Jr., and Mr. Vianney B. Hokuk, other elected officials, dignitaries, and members of the general public. But before we proceed forward with this public hearing, let me introduce the members of the Standing Committee on Executive Appointment and Government Investigation. And I would like to announce a couple of things and information in the interest of information purposes and some house rule regarding the code of ethics and conduct during this public hearing. Today, the members of the Standing Committee of the EAGI are conducting a public hearing on the appointment of Mr. Peter Q. Cruz Jr. and Vianney B. Hokuk to serve as a member of the Marianas Public Land Trust. And the public will be invited to make comments as to whether you support or oppose the appointment of the subject appointees who is before us this morning. And we value all your input. However, any comments beyond the facts of the appointment or comments that are not directly related to this public hearing will not be entertained. Such comment will be removed from the record. At this time, please observe minimal noises disrupting the hearing process, and please turn your electronic into a silent mode or private mode. Thank you. But before we begin, I'd like first to recognize our Senate President joining us. And he's not a member of the EAGI committee, but he can sit in every standing committee as he feels to participate. Let us begin. This public hearing is now in session today, February 2nd, 2022, at 10:05 a.m. in the morning in the Senate Chamber, Capitol Hill, Saipan. This is a public hearing regarding the appointment of Peter Q. Cruz Jr. and Vianney B. Hokuk by Governor Rob De Leon Guerrero Torres to serve as members of the Marianas Public Land Trust pursuant to Article 11, Section 6 of the Constitution of the Northern Marianas, as amended by the Constitution number 33. Jolene B. Duenas-Tagabo is our clerk for this hearing, with the assistance of our Eole Devin Macaranas and Ben Kamatsu, our IT, and Sergeant at Arm Ben Tulay. Mr. Joe Bermudez will be our legal counsel and will serve accordingly to this public hearing. I would like now I'd like to introduce the members. To my right is Senator Carl K. Neighbors. And to my left is the Vice President of the Senate, Senator Justo Kirwa. Senate Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Senator Francisco Q. Cruz, Senator Victor B. Hokuk,
Here.
Senator Carl R. King Neighbors,
Here.
Senator Justo S. Kirwa, Senator Vinny F. Sablan. Mr. Chairman, 3 members are present, 2 members are absent.
We have 3 members present. We constitute the necessary quorum to move forward and conduct our committee hearing for this morning. For the record, I'd like to show that Senator Cruz and Senator Vini Sablan are hereby excused. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda for today's public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to adopt today's agenda.
Okay, there's a motion has been seconded. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Now I would like to acknowledge and recognize Governor Ralph De Leon Guerrero Torres, his representative, Mr. Tom Manglonia, to address his written or oral testimony. For Mr. Vianney, Mr. Peter Q. Cruz and Vianney Hokuk, also for their testimony. At this time, before we allow that, I'd like to excuse the Vice President as he's got appointment with the public health. So you may be excused, Vice. Thank you.
Buenas, half a day, and good morning, President Hofschneider, Vice Chairman Hokug, and honorable members of this committee. For the record, my name is TJ DLC Magnolia, representative for the Office of the Governor. On behalf of Governor Ralph D.O.G. Torres, I thank you for the opportunity to come and testify before you here today. I'm here to introduce the governor's nominees for the Marianas Public Land Trust Board of Trustees, Mr. Peter Q. Cruz Jr. and Mr. Vianney B. Hokuk. Mr. Cruz is no stranger to public service in the Commonwealth.
My excuse, can I
Yes.
have the sergeant bring the two nominees?
Would you like me to start over? Or?
Go ahead, continue. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm here to introduce the governor's nominees for the Marianas Public Land Trust Board of Trustees, Mr. Peter Q. Cruz Jr. and Mr. Vianney B. Hokuk. Mr. Cruz is no stranger to public service in the Commonwealth. He graduated from the Department of Public Safety's 7th Police Academy in 1988 and eventually served as the resident department head for DPS on Tinian from 1999 to 2005. Mr. Cruz also served as a member of the Tinian Gaming Control Commission from 2005 to 2010, which further solidifies his experience in a governing body. Mr. Hokuk also has a long resume as a public servant. He served as a member of the 9th Sinamai House of Representatives, was a former executive director for Veterans Affairs, a former deputy commissioner for the Marianas Public Lands Authority, and also served as the governor's representative for the island of Rota. In addition, Mr. Hokuk is also an honored veteran who served as a member of the United States Marine Corps. Governor Torres places his full trust and confidence in Mr. Cruz and Mr. Hokuk as members of the Marianas Public Land Trust Board of Trustees. I know they stand ready to answer your questions and present their plans for the future. Their long history of professional experience, credentials, and commitment to serving the Commonwealth in this capacity make them viable candidates, and we ask for your expeditious approval. Thank you, Cesar Smossies and Gilisol, for the opportunity to introduce them to this August body. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tom. Uh, let me just go a short recess. on short recess. Now I would like to ask the two appointees to please stand up to take your oaths of. And Mr. Lin, can you administer the oath for the two appointees?
Please raise your right hand. Mr. Peter Q. Cruz Jr. and Mr. Vianney B. Hokuk, you do solemnly swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you shall give in the matter at hand shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to recognize now Mr. Peter Q. Cruz to have your testimony or your prepared statement to the committee.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of this committee, Chairman Hokuk, Senator of Neighbors, and Senator Kirigua, and of course, the Senate President, Judith Schneider. It is an honor and privilege to be here before you this morning for my reappointment as trustee of the Marianas Public Land Trust, representing the 2nd Senatorial District of the Island of Tinian. It is with strong conviction, with this body's consent and confirmation of reappointment, that I will continue to strive to uphold my constitutional mandates with emphasis of care, prudent, and reasonable investment of the trust fund. It is with utmost importance with investments of funds be equal or better returns than the one of the benchmark, but most importantly, to have a balanced portfolio for protection in the downward market, as the markets are very volatile. Nonetheless, social investing is paramount and is vital to our Commonwealth. I, as trustee, will continue to support in assisting our island's needs, such as in the areas of natural disasters, power generation, healthcare, and consent decrees. It is my hope that we, together, can embrace the many challenges ahead to make our community and Commonwealth better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I recognize the other appointee, Mr. Vianney, reappointment, for your reappointment testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And members, distinguished members of the committee. Precisely, Mr. President, it's my honor for you to be in attendance today of this hearing. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recognize the presence of our long-term serving public service, the former Honorable Senator Rika Pangilinan. I guess she is a former member of this House. She is the current chairwoman. We have our administrator, Mr. Bobby Regis, and of course, I'm in attendance with my wife, Angie Hokuk. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity again to appear before this august body. I have been in this chamber numerous times for the same appointments. I guess the relative information that we have has been illustrated by Trustee Cruz. We have the booklet of all information relative to MPLT, even if the members would like to receive. Mr. Chairman, it's been my august duty to serve on the trust. I guess the extensive experience that we have had over the years have given us the opportunity to grow the funds more so than we could imagine. And having said that, I'd like to ask the indulgence of the committee again for the trust and the confidence to be bestowed upon my service to the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hokuk. Now I would like to recognize the individuals that are requested to appear to provide written or oral testimony with respect to the two appointees. Ms. Barbara, okay. Former Senator Fika, a member of the MPLT trustee. And before you move forward, can you please provide your state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually drafted my testimony this morning, and I guess the ailing of the minds and the aged, I thought I had it in my car, but it was not in my car, and I thank my 11-year-old son that he was technically savvy and was able to send it to my email. But good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Maria Fricati Pangilinan. I currently serve as one of the trustees for the Marianas Public Land Trust, representing women, and I was currently voted by the members to be the chair for one term. I appear before your committee this morning to support the appointments of Trustee Biani Hokuk from Rhoda and Pedro de la Cruz from Tinian. Both trustees have served and worked with me for more than one term, over 6 years, and we appreciate the honor and accepted our fiduciary responsibilities very seriously. Trustee Hokuk and Trustee Cruz are experienced members through their many years of serving as trustees for MPLT and understand their fiduciary duties. They have contributed the investment skills they honed during these many years of service and have the driving force to continue accomplishing MPLT's tasks. I'm confident that they will continue to devote their time and efforts in the best interest of our people. Their confirmation would ensure the continuity in fulfilling the goals of MPLT with their current knowledge and experience in investment, and would also meet the constitutional amendment requirement that one member must be from the senatorial district of Rhoda and Tinian. Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your support in confirming Trustee Hokuk and Trustee Cruz to continue serving as trustees of MPLT, as I look forward to continuing working with them in my role as the chairperson. Thank you again, and I will submit my hard copies to the committees as soon as I get home.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Frika. We have in our list here Ms. Barbara Regis, Administrator Public Land Trust. If you're willing to step forward to make testimony. Thank you. The Honorable Edwin Biaudon. The Honorable Efren Atalik. The Chairman of the Tinian 18 Municipal Council, Ms. Joseph E. Santos. The Chairman and member of the Rota 18 Municipal Council, Donovan Lizama. Okay. With all these names that I call, they are also requested to provide oral comments and or written testimony. Nonetheless, they're not here, so I figure out that they have a busy schedule in their respective area. Now I would like to welcome all private citizens' testimony to make public comments before the committee. Anyone from the public? Okay, I see that there's no one from the public would like to provide testimony, so we'll move on to our next item with the acknowledgement of all the written and oral testimony from those that provided the committee. Now, I would like to recognize the member to provide their statements to the appointees if they have any. And with due respect, I would like to ask our president if he's got any concern to air out before the committee with respect to the two appointees.
Thank you, no, Mr. Chairman. Buenos días para todo manggay gini, especialmente ni dos na distinguished appointee, si Mr. Cruz and si Mr. Hokuk. Malago sa lokyo na bay noy con respeto and rekomendasyon para asawa niya, si Ms. Cruz and si Mrs. Hukuk. And to di familia ni dumanyai i-endorse na appointee. Former Senator, our colleague, Senator Africa, welcome back to the chamber. It's good to see you. And to the ones that are watching over the cable news, and I think we're also on Facebook. It is indeed a monumental day as both appointees have re-upped their agreement to continue serving. And they're going to ask the indulgence of the members of the Senate to affix their desire. One thing that I caught wind of in both nominees is the consistency and the level of confidence you both possess through the years since you guys served to grow the portfolio of MPLT. And this goes out to all of your colleagues as well. And I like the fact that there's growth and there's diversification in terms of the programs, as both you guys, you two worked with us in the legislature to assist the CNMI government currently and assist critical agencies to continue services to our general public. I want to thank you for allowing that and opening it up. And I also want to acknowledge that there are some good things that are coming down, but I would not divulge those information as of now, as you guys are still technically being renominated. But I encourage the foresightedness and the continuation of working together with the CNMA government and amongst ourselves here. Because if you look to the left, if you look to the right, there's nobody that's going to do it for us. It's only us collectively. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't have a pointed question. Simply, I would defer that matter to our members. I do want to express my desire to see if they continue to serve in this capacity. Talambay, pare familia, thank you nun naturisa talo si Vianney dan si Pete ni para makontinua. Mas mana busy siya daily day to day ni. I think sometimes we overlook the support from the family also in catching another or agreeing to another level of responsibility, despite your busy schedules daily. So with that, Mr. Chair, paramzo todo si Jesus Mosi, and I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator President. Now, let me recognize now Senator Cruz, if he's got any concern to address to Senator Carl neighbors, if he's got any concern to address to the appointees. Recognize that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to thank again both of the nominees for accepting the nomination and being willing to provide their services to our community in their capacity. One of the things I had a question of, as long-serving members of MPLT, it has provided you guys with insight and a privileged perspective on better understanding the role and responsibilities of a trustee. Would you care to share some of the eventful and proud moments as a trustee that you've experienced during your time, and also memorably unpleasant moments as a trustee that you would like to have done differently? This is open to any or both members.
Well, then, thank you, Senator Navas. I think over the years we have contributed to the government by $60 million actually in assistance. We have assisted several government institutions and agencies to get them up and going. One of the many infractions, I would say, was the organizations from the local indigent community requesting assistance from MPLT. MPOT is a constitutional creation with a limited version to take public land leases invested and give the interest to the general fund, subject for the apportionment by the legislature. We wish we can help the local organizations by means of just us taking the funds and giving to them. The problem is the constitutional provision has not been stipulated, so to speak. So how we would like to address that in many sense of the word is, there is a word in investment called SRI, which is called socially responsible investing. And in this kind of investment, we invest the capitals of MPLT by natures of socially measuring the achievements. Example, I would give grants to ongoing college students, them returning to the Commonwealth. We measure those population base on the investment being incurred and the forthcoming reciprocal returns from college students. However, we are not into those kind of stipulations by the Constitution. Same with those from the indigent organizations requesting funding for them to be culturally in tune with their foresights. We don't tell them to go to the legislature to seek for those venues. I guess it's not our role to be telling on what is the legislative provisions. But if there is any reason for us to participate in this kind of program, you will be part of the inherent benefactors for the indigent people. As we speak, the Constitution stipulates that the public lands belongs to the indigent people. But the Constitution also provides that all the essential capitalizations goes specifically to the general fund subject for the apportionment of the legislature. So our hands are tied. We have entered into the courtrooms for the stipulations to that effect. But Judge Naraha does not want to infer any particular stipulation that would increase the power of the trust or diminish the power of the trust. So looking into the Article 2, where the legislative provisions entails rather, I guess the venue that we have is seeking venue, shelter for legislative consent. And what is before the House at this particular moment is the House Joint Resolution for us to partake into the management and administration of the ARPA funds. Those are the kind of provisions that gives rise to the definitions of MPOTs, limited authority as provided by the Constitution. So I'd like to ask the indulgence against of this body. Come time for them to be transmitted to the Senate, that the Senate will support MPOT participating in the ARPA funds. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Neighbors. I would like to just reiterate Trustee Hawkins and the social responsible investment in that respect also is very tight, so to speak, meaning you have to accord with the constitutional mandate, of which the very word it says fiduciary duty. So fiduciary duty is a person or organization that acts on behalf of a person or persons, putting their clients ahead of their own, a duty to preserve good faith and trust. That in itself is an abundance of responsibility. And that's the reason why in each investment that we do, we are so careful applying prudent practices and reasonable of such investment so that our clients, which are the beneficiaries, will not be deprived of their income. So I'll just name a few for the social responsible investment. Back in 2001, the Northern Marianas Housing Authority come to an agreement with MPLT and a loan, $10 million for the low-income family. And that, through the years as it gone by, didn't turn good with the MIA. administering it, there's a lot of delinquents. So MPOT then took it back with a loss. Better taking it back and getting sporadic payments than get a loss further down the line. Then 2002, the Apple program was also been administered. Come along with the CUC back in 2008, if you can remember, the blackouts. That's worth 3,500 or 3,500,000. And then the payment for the PSS utility in 2011 for 4 million. The Commonwealth Health Center, 3 million back in 2012. And also, in line with that, they also asked for an electronic health record to suffice their informational data for 328,000 some dollars. And then in 2014, the CUC stipulated order, which is the consent decree, they were given $5 million. 2016, municipality of Tinian, during that crisis that uphold the coffers of the municipality of Tinian, we loaned them 1.3. 2019, the YouTube program. Everybody knows that it's a disastrous natural disaster. Everybody suffered one way or the other. And we took that into account in a careful, prudent, reasonable manner. And we loaned them $50 million. So the aspect of that is it makes me feel, although it's very convoluted, but it makes me feel that I could do it in a very frugal manner in the trust fund. What frustrates me is that the fiduciary duty is very strict in its definition. So maybe perhaps this body and the legislative branch could maybe formulate a legislative authority for MPOTs should any source of income coming our way aside from public land leases. So in that way, we could extend our far-reaching hand to help either the community, municipality, or business entrepreneurs. But as of now, as mandated by the Constitution, it's a tight hand. So that's the frustration that I have. If you guys give us a legislative authority to do far-reaching things aside from the mandates of the Constitution. Thank you, Senator Rivers.
Thank you, nominee Cruz, and as well, Mr. Hokuk. I appreciate your candor, and we'll take into consideration what was put forward. Again, I'd like to thank you guys for accepting this pre-nomination, and I look forward to this committee's consent.
Thank you, Chairman Neighbor. Let me recognize the Senate President. He's got some question to ask the two appointees.
Thank you,
Recognize
Thank
President.
you, Mr. Chairman. Just what jumps out, and thank you for that information, Trustee Cruz. I just wanted to find out in the context of your responsibility right now as far as investment. I noticed that, and correct me if I'm wrong, what do you guys take, like high risk, low risk, medium risk? What are the categories of investment that you guys engage in as authorized based on anyone?
You know, Mr. President, thank you. MPLT is we have a investment policy statement that calls for diversity. You know, we have high yield, low yield, top, bottom up. I guess it took us many years to understand this, and we're not in any position to make the honorable colleagues understood it in a matter of 30 minutes, so to speak. But the diversification of MPLT has taken the funds way past the 100 million bracket. And I guess we are fond of it. We're proud of it to present to the Commonwealth that the diligence that MPLT have partaken and bestowed upon the trust, we are very confident that the continuous flow of growth will be inherent. During the downfall of the collapse of the New York Stock Exchange, MPOT is the only institution from Hawaii, California down to Japan that is not on the downslide. I guess not to mention that the downfall of the retirement fund, MPOT have not fallen into the same bracket and experience as the trust. Thank you.
So in other words, very careful, no investment portfolio.
You know, Mr. President, MPOT is a very different animal. There's only three words bestowed: careful, reasonable, and prudent. What that means, we don't know. So we take it from a layman's position. Just do the right thing. We learn something. Doing the right thing and doing it the right way is two different things. I thought it's the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Exactly what the Vice Chairman, diversification. And that's the reason why in my testimony I said that the most utmost important is to have a balanced portfolio to for protection on a downward market. Meaning, if the market goes down, like bearish market, right? All of your average peers will go down, but how much will you will go down compared to the benchmark? That's what that meant. That means if you have a large risk exposure, then mean you are investing in a more riskier sector. We have this status-gram, a box, right, left, right, upper left, upper right, lower left, lower right. The far upper right is what you call a risk tolerance. However, if the riskier you invest, the better return. But on the opposite side, the riskier you take, the downward greater you will get. So it's a balanced portfolio. We have to make it balanced. And some of which, if there's a new source of income that comes to MPOT and we are to allocate it, what we usually do is we go to our process like a simulation. We ask our investment consultant to come up with an optimizer measuring the degree of risk tolerance that we are getting if we are to allocate these funds on a different model. So in that model, it will tell us what are the potential return and loss. So within that model, we seek the best return, less risk. If you want to go more risk, less return, that we want to go to the funds. So that I hope that explains.
Thank you, and thank you so much for that clarification. And but just one of the things that come to mind often is the and I like the SRI that you guys mentioned. You both mentioned. As have we received any proposal to whether from the legislature or just the community to engage in a commercial loan or a program whereby entrepreneurship for the indigenous or the category of our local residents here. Is there any proposal that you guys receive from any entity to support the SRI portfolio that the program that you've mentioned earlier, Trustee Loco?
Yes, we have, Mr. President, have received a couple of years back. We have proposals for during the cellular crisis. We open up for the business community. We have proposals at this time with the Tinian Shipping Company. One of the major things that over the years that I've seen amongst us as indigenous people is we look at the trust as a money that belongs to the people. And the problem with them is they don't want to pay back the money that they intend to receive. And that kind of puts us in a very specific and disastrous bindings amongst us and the people. Because the people believe that the land belongs to them, therefore the proceeds belongs to them. But the constitutional provision illustrates that the capitalization goes for us to invest and then give to general fund again, not to be repetitive to give the legislature. And it took us a while before the people understood that they have to pay back. We have to take a lot of them to the courtrooms for interpretations that they do have to pay us back. The fact of the matter remains that only the indigenous organizations have been requesting for audience to that effect. And the problem is our hands are particularly tight for us to assist them in that particular program unless it is a financial scheme. And the way we look at them is, I don't think they intend to repay, and therefore we don't forego on any of the bearings that they are requesting for us at this time. And that's why we're requesting again the indulgence of the legislature to provide a specific stipulation that can give us leeway for us to reach them as they come before the trust. That's precisely the point here, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee. No, Mr. Cruz. No.
Mr. President, exactly right, Vice Chairman. The mandate of the Constitution for us for any loan is debt serviceability. And people will come in different groups and will ask for a loan, but they can service the debt. So, in as much as we want to, we are not bound to do that. And in any case, in any form that we have contradicted otherwise as mandated in the Constitution, then we're personally liable of that action. Thank you, Mr. President.
Jesus Masi. The reason why I asked because I know there's potentially other agencies that have probably similar programs, but I'm not going to belabor the question. I would yield and allow the hearing to go through. But thank you so much again for providing those guidance. Appreciate it. You
Mr.
back.
Chairman, just if I may, just one particular point. I understood, and I regret that Vice President Kiriko is not around to hear my statement here. I know he's been inquiring about the matters of MPLT being open, being whatever fairness, so to speak, by the language. But I want the Senate to understand MPLT is the most audited institution of the Commonwealth government. Our annualized report have provided for all information relative to the matters of the trust. I know one particular time there's an allegation that the trust has overspent on their occasions for meetings. And Mr. Chairman, let me just repeat for purposes of this hearing today that the 500,000 that was alleged, if you divide that by 3, is equated to $100,000 only. In the particulars of MPLT, it is an institution that requires constant meeting and constant analysis of its capitalization invested in New York Stock Exchange. It's not the same as us putting it in the bank. We have to be prudent. We have to be diligent in the forthcoming incidentals of the federal government and the New York Stock Exchange. This is something that we have to react. We don't wait for
Right.
the storm to come around us. And that's precisely the point. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, as Trustee Hoku keeps responding, he keeps driving questions to my mind, and I just wanted to thank you again for those remarks. I do want to recognize there are some creative financing, perhaps, to partner up with municipalities, so such to engage in a possible infrastructure needs that is beneficial to the community that it serves. And I do know that your mind is working with regards to that particular matter. No, things have changed over the last couple years. U2 has already been there, but there's a bigger situation right now before us. Everybody knows, and we need to continue on striving to how to stabilize those. And I appreciate the candor and as what was mentioned earlier, and your flexibility to think outside the box, and at the same time complying with your definition of being prudent investors for the trust. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the last time, I will you back.
Thank you, Senator Press. Chairman Neighbor, you have any other question? Okay. I decided not to make any statement. But after hearing the testimony from the two, it rings me a loud bell in my ear. And maybe it is correct that MPLT trustees and its employee have been doing the right thing as well as doing it the right way. So my next concern here is you are all concerned about your fiduciary duties. How about the fiduciary responsibilities? Where are we with that? So I would like to probably say that doing the right thing on the right way is also MPLT trustees are upholding to their fiduciary duties as well as their fiduciary responsibilities. And it is for that reason that we see the growth of the trustee from 4 years ago. I believe it was only 68 million that you have if you are with MPLT. And today, what level of funding do we have as we speak right now here? Any one of the two members, the appointee can provide the committee with that. Recognize Trustee Cruz.
Mr. Chairman, level funding, specifically, what do you mean by that?
4 years ago, the MPLT have had in the amount of $68 million. Is that correct?
I I hope so. I think so. Yes.
And as we speak right now in this chamber, what level of funding does MPLT have on hand?
Okay. For the general fund, as of December 2021, we have $106 million plus. And for the park fund, we have 12 million, 800 some thousand, close to 13 million.
So with that respect, how do we avail to the general fund? And what is the other fund you were mentioning, Trustee Cruz?
Park fund, American Park Fund.
Okay, so how do we avail to which of the funding to seek assistance from MPLT?
Right now, for the general fund, for the U2 loan, that falls under the diversified local investment, which is another word for the social responsible investment, and that loan is been every year is been offset as a debt service payment for the MPLT. So what that means is that if in case we're remitting $1.5 million to our general fund, then we offset that and reinvest it again on our portfolio, debt servicing the loan. So right now, the U2 loan, $15 million, was then passed in 2019, and we started offsetting it the year 2020. And up until now, we have a balance of about $12 million for the U2 loan.
So that funding is coming out from what you stipulated as general fund.
Yes, sir. The interest income.
Okay. So as we speak today, does MPLT continue to provide earned interest to the general fund for subject for appropriation by the legislature?
No, sir. This is in the means of offset, meaning whatever interest that were to submit to the general fund, we reinvested back to the portfolio because of the debt service agreement.
Okay, I understand that, but when was the last time MPLT provided earned interest income to the general fund subject for appropriation?
2019.
And from that period of time, and the reason being is that other agencies have provided loan from MPLT that the government the earned interest is subjected to defray those loan?
No, sir. The other non or corporation is the healthcare corporation. They have loaned $3 million, and their repayment is the interest. So their balance right now is 1 million. Maturity date will be probably a year and a half from now, sometime in September 2020, 2023. So what we have a current loan, diversified loan right now is the Commonwealth Health Center and the Super Typhoon U2.
So how long do we expect to see the earned interest be made available for appropriate to the executive branch for appropriation in the future?
Once they pay off in the means of any forms of payment, perhaps maybe reimbursement, that will suffice it. Well, when if we reimburse $12 million for U2, we'll turn into earn interest.
So how much is how much are we talking left for all this liability to be paid before earned interest can be made available?
We're,
12.
we're for the last 2 years we're submitting earned interest in the neighborhood of between 1.8 and 1.5, and that will translate for the $12 million, perhaps maybe 8 years to 9 years will satisfy from now.
So I'm asking this question because I like to see what opportunity that the CNMI government can service the remaining balance of their loan from funding that is made available to upgrade the economic status of the CNMI,
You know, Mr. Chairman,
Assuming-
let me enlighten you now.
assuming ARPA. Can that funding be used to clear the unpaid balance from the government that have been loaned by MPLT?
Mr. Chairman, the ARPA funds is dictated and governed by the U.S. Treasury, and it is my snapshot understanding that ARPA funds is for like economic activities that were deeply hurt by the pandemic, and I'm not very sure regarding the definite definitions of what you can and can't do. But if ARPA funds can reimburse us, by all means, please, so we can start putting in the earned interest to the general fund.
Okay, so that's exactly where I'm driving, is that if there is a possibility, and because of the pandemic, that we realize the downfall of revenue coming into the general fund, right?
Yes, sir.
So if the pandemic caused the third phase of recovery for economic revenue, generation of revenue, then if that funding can be made available, if it's permissible and available, then maybe it's not bad to look into it and see whether we can write off and start seeing earned interest from their investment being returned back to the general fund for distribution to other department and municipalities. That's where I'm leaning toward, but I sure don't know whether that falls under rescuing the economic downturn due to pandemic
So,
or what?
well, Mr. Chairman, if for that matter, ARPA funds does not permit a reimbursement for U2, then perhaps maybe legislative authority will do such thing. Because what I understand is the ARPA funds have two compartments where you can administer. One is loan and one is grant. So absent legislative authority for us to administer that, I don't think we can do that.
And that's where exactly I'm putting this out so you can make that mention and be heard that you need legislative consent for MPOT to ensure what lies ahead of their plans to augment that $12 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You know, Mr. Chairman, just to enlighten the committee, if the council will be privileged enough to take a look at section 602 of the ARPA funding provisions. That would precisely illustrates what are the can-dos and do-nots of the federal funding. But as not to be repeating what Trustee Cruz has said, if there's any legislative stipulation for us to venture into the outreach of this natures, I think the ARPA fund would be the most appropriate venue for us to be repaid, and then interest will be repaid by the following subsequent year. Thank you.
Thank you for that new information, and we'll seriously look into doing what MPLT need the legislature to provide them with more clear authority of what the trustees will be doing moving forward. I think I have one more or two more questions that just leap out of my. But so I just want to make this for the record. So CUC loan is totally cleared, other than CHCC is still at negative with MPLT.
That's correct, sir. Healthcare and U2 is the only pending debt service for MPLT.
Okay, so thank you, Trustee Cruz and Trustee Okuk. And also, I would like to extend my appreciation to Madam Chair Fika for dedicating your time and efforts to other members of your trustee, as well as I'd like to recognize your hardworking administrative staff who at times being called on wee hours to come and help the trustees do some of the stuff that trustees are trying to finish it up on the wee hours time. And I just hope that as we grow with the corpus of MPLT and funds are available, that we can look into assisting the municipal level in doing bridge financing for them to meet the important development of infrastructure to ensure that we cope up with other development for investment opportunity, to entice investment opportunity in the respective senatorials. And we will surely look into the concern of MPLT to ensure that we give you the tool to leverage more of your creative financing moving forward, as you will be taking another 4 years along with other trustees, and we hope that we can address the indigenous people concern regarding our funding with public land, as we always said that the funding of that entity belongs to the Northern Marianas Descent. And also I would like to follow up between public land and MPLT regarding land leases. Are they being fully, does public land fully return what's supposedly to be at the hands of Marianas Public Land Trust? And if not, then maybe we can also expand further legislation that will stipulate clarity of how long to be to transfer whatever public land is lease or funding is transferable to MPLT immediately upon receiving any funding as a result of land lease. And perhaps in the future, I'd like to ask the trustees to also look how can we assist our indigenous people with their concern uh, uh, regarding the assistance of funding for the indigenous. Is MPOT willing to look into setting some sort of level of funding that will be made available to our indigenous people to avail? Or I don't know if it constitutionally viable to look into any royalty uh, uh, funding that will be given to our indigenous people. I don't know that, but maybe we can look into all opportunities so our people will not be always resistance if public land is to be leased. As we know that when public land is leased out, that whatever balance should be, for their operation, whatever balance, they should return that or deposit it to MPLT. Is that correct, trustees?
That's correct, sir.
So up to you today, have you cleared everything with DPL of what need to be remitted to MPLT?
Uh,
Yeah,
there,
Mr. Chairman, the MPOT and DPO have a long standing of animosities and impeding infractions, actually. MPOT wants to collect from DPO wants to give MPOT. We go to the court makes stipulation. The problem with this is, can the court impound revenues from DPO subject to be taken by MPOT? We have Roman share versus MPOT. We have all kinds of authorities present in the court. The problem is, can MPOT go to the bank and take the money from DPO as alleged? That has been the forefront impediment between us. And forevermore, unless there is a standing provision that states otherwise, it will be forevermore a case between DPL and MPLT.
Mr. Chair, to answer you with that, DPO, before becoming a line item department, earn their budget through administrative expense, then less goes to the MPOT. But now, since Public Law 15-2 created the agency to be a department, they're budgeted. They're under the Budget Act. So whatever budget that that was passed by both houses, that's their budget. They can't hold any other money aside from that, of which to infer with the reserve funds. They have to have a budget. If the budget is five, then five they get. They can't be reserving certain amount of money on the side, and that's the discussion and disagreement among MPOT and Department of Public Land. So if you could assist us in having them transfer over, we don't want to go litigate this. It's going to cost a lot of money for lawyers to go to court. We want to resolve this amicably so that we can have that money and have it reinvested in the market or have it invested in the diversified local investment.
Chairman, I'd like to recommend the legislature appropriating the balance of DPO to MPLT. That's about the only standing venue that I can recommend at this time. Thank you.
When brothers among department have infight, it's disastrous, right? But we're only one people. one Commonwealth. So I don't know whether to do it by legislation or more appropriately to have another constitutional convention to ensure the duties and responsibilities of agencies having conflict when it comes to uh, revenue generation as to who have the authority to ex- to spend or to hold. I understand that DPL also have the administrative costs directly from whatever lease, right, that they have. But again, it always comes back to the legislature when DPL open homestead. Who is responsible to develop the necessary infrastructure within the homestead? Is it the Commonwealth government or the entity that is charged to do the infrastructure development within the village homestead? So those are the issues that maybe is holding back this hardcore decision not to remit, because they may be contemplating also to use those funding for the development of infrastructure within the village homestead that have been issued to our local indigenous people. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure we can come up with amicable understanding, and if it requires legislation to move that forward and clear the air, then help us. What is it that we need to do?
I think, Mr. Chairman, that's the only venue. Let me go back a couple of years when I was the Deputy Commissioner for Public Land. We gave $4 million to MPOT, and then we come to the legislature asking for money to develop homestead program. It's the most nonsensical element and fraction of the government. I have $4 million, but I cannot spend it for homestead. I have to give it away, then come to another body to ask for money to develop homestead program. I think what is conducive on this particular instance is DPL should be responsible to develop homestead programs. And by venue of them collecting money, they should be able to facilitate. Now, that belongs to the councils, whether there is legitimate reason for them to administer that, or since DPL is now under the auspices of the legislature in terms of operations and management budget, they can be requesting to develop by sense. It's not to say that I don't want DPL to give MPLT their balance, but the problem is DPL is giving homestead programs absent infrastructural development. And then they're requiring that you have to pass the inspection absent facilitations for electricity, water, and roadways. It doesn't make sense, just speaking from my experience as being in that particular office. Thank you.
Thank you, both. And before we move on, I like again for the last time to ask if Senator Chairman Neighbor, you have any other question to ask, or Mr. President? Okay. So, Jolene, can we hear how many testimonies are for and against the two nominees?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Senate EAGI Committee, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Hokuk, and members of the general public. In addition to the oral testimonies received today and the executive appointment of Mr. Peter Q. Cruz Jr. and Mr. Vianney B. Hokuk to serve as members of the Marianas Public Land Trust, please be advised of one additional written testimony officially received in support of the appointees from Mr. Martin B. Adda and PLT trustee. At this time, no written testimony opposing the appointments of either appointees has been received by the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Jolene. Okay, with this, with all public comments are well taken, let the record reflects that they are also written testimonies submitted from individuals in support of the appointees before this committee, and will conclude the Senate Standing Committee report along with oral testimony to be forwarded to the full Senate members in consideration for the confirmation or rejection. At this time, before we adjourn, I would like to extend on behalf of the members of the Standing Committee our sincere appreciation to Governor Ralph De Leon Torres and his representative, Tom Manglone, for presenting the renomination of Mr. Peter Q. Cruz Jr. and Mr. Vianney B. Hokuk, and most especially the members of the general public for your participation and involvement during this important public hearing process. And we certainly hope that we continue the dialogue of communication between us, the elected official, and the public to keep us abreast and inform our current and future Senate hearings ahead that related to public best interest. And this concludes our public hearing for today. And do I hear a motion for adjournment?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a motion to adjourn today's EAGI public hearing, subject to the call of the chair. So,
There's a motion for adjournment for today's public hearing. And I can second that. Legal counsel? Okay. Okay, so if none, then those in favor of the motion to adjourn say aye.
aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you for your participation this public hearing. Again, to the chair, to Bobby, administrative assistants, and other members from the public. Thank you for your participation today.
Thank you too, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we're now adjourned. We adjourn this public hearing at 11:15.